Now, to start off our conversation, I'd like to give our viewers a kind of overview of what we're going to talk about. So since we are, at the beginning of the year, what are your forecasts and, of course, expectations for 2025?
Now for 2025, I think this is going to be a year that we are going to record continuous trend of economic recovery. This year, end of last year, we have been able to stabilize the economy and kind of set up the foundation for the economy to leap forward if proper policy reforms and programs are implemented. Next year, at least to grow well above 3%, which is again above the other expectations for the agencies like the IMF forecast 3% growth, World Bank LMDtv also something similar. We will be able to perform better than other agencies expected. It's most probably record over 3%, but we will wait and see, especially for us to revise and come out with a proper number for the prediction next year. We would like to see the Q4 growth also, final numbers. Then we will revise our predictions and we'll then announce kind of a specific number that we think it will happen over a period of time. But since 10 years, see now multiple chances are appropriate to the current inflation outlook. So first part is to maintain fiscal consolidation. Second part is to restore sovereign sustainability. We have already completed restore sustainability. And second part is to have a proper monetary policy, targeting and maintaining very stable inflation in terms of legislations, in terms of social safety net, in terms of addressing corruption vulnerabilities, and in terms of safeguarding financial system stability. That is our objective, and also maintaining the stable the inflation. This is a very narrow path. Any deviation from this path obviously have a risk of falling back into a difficult situation. That's why very carefully developed path. We need to move in that direction as a country in the same path.
2025 is upon us and all eyes are on the economy. We spoke about all of this and more with Dr. Nandalal Weerasinghe. Stay tuned.
For 30 years, LMD has been the voice of business in Sri Lanka, capturing the pulse of the nation's corporate landscape through its iconic covers. Each cover tells a story, from the first edition in 1994 to the present day, narrating key moments, leaders and trends that have shaped Sri Lanka's business ecosystem. Over the years, LMD covers have featured thought leaders, business pioneers and game-changing innovations, reflecting the evolution of industries and the economy. As we celebrate 30 years, these covers represent more than just publications. They are a testament to LMD's legacy of excellence in business journalism and its unwavering commitment to being Sri Lanka's leading voice of business. LMD, Sri Lanka's voice of business, a legacy of 30 years.
Happy New Year and welcome to LMDtv. The topic of conversation today is the New Year economy, and we are here with the Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Dr. Nandalal Weerasinghe. Dr. Weerasinghe, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Ruwandi.
Now, to start off our conversation, I'd like to give our viewers a kind of overview of what we're going to talk about. So since we are, at the beginning of the year, what are your forecasts and, of course, expectations for 2025?
Now for 2025, I think this is going to be a year that we are going to record continuous trend of economic recovery. For example, 2024, we would expect economy to record 5% growth, first time after long period, even after the contraction and the crisis. The first year of the kind of V-shaped recovery we have seen, witnessed, and it's going to be 5%. Going forward, this year, end of last year, we have been able to stabilize the economy and kind of set up the foundation for the economy to leap forward if proper policy reforms and programs are implemented. So on that basis, I would expect next year at least to grow well above 3%, which is again above the other expectations for the agencies like the IMF forecast 3% growth, World Bank LMDtv also something similar. But if you look at the actual performance so far, last year expectation was 2% by the IMF, 4.4% by the World Bank recently upgraded, but we are going to record 5%. And next year also, I'm very confident we will be able to perform better than other agencies expected. It's most probably record over 3%, but we will wait and see, especially for us to revise and come out with the proper number for the prediction next year. We would like to see the Q4 growth also, final numbers. Then we will revise our predictions and we'll then announce kind of a specific number that we think we have always been more accurate than anyone else projections on growth. And obviously inflation, our main objective. We hope that we will get back to our normal range of inflation target, which is around 5% over a medium to long term. Right now, obviously, we all know it's a deflationary situation on a temporary basis that will come back to normal inflation based on our target and our commitment. It will happen over a period of time, but since then you are seeing our multiple stances are quite appropriate to the current inflation outlook.
I want to talk about growth more, but before that, you spoke about policy reforms, and I mean, it is ongoing. What is the importance you place on Sri Lanka dedicating and continuing the commitment towards the ongoing reforms?
Which is the most important, if you can remember all the time on a very consistent basis, Central Bank, we have been emphasizing and highlighting the importance of moving in the one direction. Since the beginning of the crisis, this only path that first part of the reforms is to address fiscal consolidation, which was the root cause of the crisis we had 2 years ago. So first part is to maintain fiscal consolidation. Second part is to restore sovereign sustainability. We have already completed restore sustainability. And second part is to have a proper monetary policy, targeting and maintaining very stable inflation. And with all these macro foundations, obviously, country is ready to grow at a higher rate than what we have seen in the past. At the same time, to support that growth, it's necessary to implement all the structural reforms that we have committed in terms of legislations, in terms of social safety net, in terms of addressing corruption vulnerabilities, and in terms of safeguarding financial system stability. That is our objective, and also maintaining the stable kind of the inflation going forward. Those are the key factors that we need to move in the same direction. I'm glad that despite changes in government, all administrations have now committed to maintain that path. This is a very narrow path. Any deviation from this path obviously have a risk of falling back into a difficult situation. That's why very carefully developed path. We need to move in that direction as a country in the same path.
And when we're moving in that direction, like you said, these factors have to be stabilized and stabilized. If you look at the injections or the drivers of growth, what would you say they are?
And the growth, obviously, there's a capacity constraint for the growth. Because, for example, what you say, there's a potential growth. Country can grow up to a certain potential, and that potential we think about 3.5% to 4%. So with the stabilization, without any kind of reforms, we will get back to normal growth path in this way. But in our view, that growth is not sufficient. We have to enhance the country's capacity and potential to grow well above 5%. For that is why it's important to implement necessary reforms. For example, addressing corruption and vulnerabilities, making it easier to do in business, have easy access to credit, and also the transparency of all these activities of government, efficient delivery of public services, and also the private sector involvement in promoting export-oriented businesses and the growth businesses, as well as ability to attract foreign direct investment, both medium to long term, and also the short-term portfolio inflows on a more stable basis. For that, we need country confidence on investors of our program going forward for the next several years. And also the important factor after crisis is the improving our sovereign ratings. That certainly will happen soon. With that, there will be a lot more confidence on investors. But confidence is not enough. We need to have a proper environment for them to come and do business here, both domestic and foreign investors, to be able to do business without bureaucratic issues, without any delays, and having the facilitation and the public administration and service delivery needs to be much more improved. Those are the important reforms that will basically enhance the capacity to grow and potential to grow. That's important. That's why we have sufficient period of space with the debt relief for next several years. So government can focus on addressing all these structural deficiencies so that our capacity to grow would be higher.
It's time now to take a very short break, but we'll soon be back to talk more about the economy.
Display your brand message on digital screens at prime locations. The largest digital advertising network in Sri Lanka. Emerging Media.
Welcome back to the show. We're in conversation with the Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Dr. Nandalal Weerasinghe. And you paved the way to my next question. Looking at the private sector and the public sector, or local and foreign entities, how important is collaboration and how can we make it better than what it is right now as we go towards reaching our potential?
No, it's certainly very important. For example, now when you look at Sri Lanka's structure of the economy, historically public sector has been involved in a lot of public service deliveries. For example, if you look at the electricity, utilities, water, telecommunication, insurance, even banking, there's a large public sector involvement. So public sector involvement is okay as long as those state-owned enterprises are performing like private enterprises without having any burden to the treasury and the taxpayer. They should be able to perform like a private enterprise that could focus on making services efficient and providing the services to the public at the most competitive rates in competition with the private sector. That will provide a level playing field for the private sector and the public sector both. That's the first part. The second part is certainly private sector ability to participate in more economic activities, and that is especially very important when you look at the fiscal consolidation path. Government and taxpayers' ability to support growth in terms of public expenditure, both investment, public investment as well as regular expenditure, is now constrained. For example, next several years, government will have to generate primary surpluses of 2% over several years, which means government ability to spend taxpayers' money is constrained in the right way, which means that there will be a lot of opportunities for the private sector to come and participate on a much more open, transparent basis in all economic activities, including in competitive basis. The areas there where private public sector also involved. So I think that is where quite level playing field for everyone to participate on a very transparent basis, and also opportunities for both should be opened up for equally domestic investors as well as foreign investors. That is important because any country which is developing at a faster rate, foreign direct investments and towards export-oriented economy is crucial, critical, and essential.
Yes. Dr. Weerasinghe, you spoke of public sector efficiency and also getting the private sector involved. Now, while we are leveling the playing field, how should our approach be towards ensuring governance as well?
So that's another important pillar of the reforms. I think historically we have been focusing more on the macroeconomic stabilization. Obviously, revenue consolidation we have been doing from time to time, moving in both directions, expansion and contraction. Whereas we had not been focusing sufficiently to address corruption and governance vulnerabilities. That's an important agenda for us to be able to grow at a high rate. This is where our first initiative was that IMF study, which was conducted last year to identify gaps and weaknesses in corruption vulnerabilities and governance issues in the public sector. It's a very useful report that was published, and everyone knows what are the areas of weaknesses. On the basis of that report, now there's a commitment by the government to address all these weaknesses in several areas. For example, the revenue collecting agencies, customs, inland revenue, the excise, and the law enforcement agencies like the prosecution, legislation, and also the several legislations are required to address some of the weaknesses in addressing governance issues and bringing people who are doing wrong things into prosecution, and the implementing and effectiveness of those reports are important. That's also important from our point of view, addressing AML, CFT, anti-money laundering, and countering terrorism. That part is also separately another agenda, falling in line, and also at the same time, now this government has a strong mandate given by the people to address that part. So that it's easier for this administration to expedite and implement all these reforms. Has a strong mandate from the people, and there's a responsibility of this government to expedite and implement, address all these corruption and governance issues. That will certainly pave way for more investor confidence and also for higher growth in this country.
Dr. Weerasinghe, we are almost at the end of our conversation. You're very optimistic, and that's very encouraging. If I ask you, what are your concluding recommendations to Sri Lanka as a whole, I would say, private sector, public sector, and basically everyone, so that we can continue this journey towards reaching our growth potential, whilst, of course, being stable and resilient?
I think what is most important to me is there's a transformation of our growth model, and public's understanding and willingness to take into a new growth model, which has to be, all the businesses should be focusing on expanding their businesses towards earning foreign exchange. That's one important part, because historically what we have seen, we have been saying we are import dependent economy. You have to change that kind of a perception from import dependent economy to export oriented economy. So everyone mindset should be changed and transformed into that part. That is from the whole private sector and government. Secondly, the public reliance on kind of the subsidy culture, asking everything from the taxpayer and government to give this subsidy, that subsidy, and reliance on the taxpayers' money for doing businesses, and continuing getting support from even for poor and vulnerable people, these people, something else, will have to be temporary support. People should be able to conduct their businesses, improve their living standards, engage in economic activities on their own sustainable basis without relying on someone else's or taxpayers' money. That's very important for our people to understand. We need to change that perception. Everything should be given by the government, and all facilities should be given by the government. Is not the way to go forward. That change in the transformation of thinking, the people, and understanding people of the issues and the difficulty in some of the reforms, and acceptance of those reforms, support for the people, is important to have a success in the programs. Without the support from the overall public, it's important. That's where people like you have to communicate right messages so people can understand, people support all the difficult reforms, so that that's the only way out of this crisis.
There's a lot of things for us to do to change the mindset.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Weerasinghe. We've been in conversation with the Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Dr. Nandalal Weerasinghe. Thank you very much for an insightful conversation, Doctor.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Ruwandi. Thank you.
And thank you to all our viewers for joining us. Until next time, take care and happy 2025.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and X. Thank you for watching and stay safe.